Back to the morning show here on the Rise News. I am Adesua Omorwan.
I'm Rufai Oseni. Can I say Happy Valentine's Day?
Of course, Happy Valentine's. I'm Sheito Atigari. Good morning. Starting off the conversation this morning with the Supreme Court of Nigeria, which has nullified the election of Bayelsa State's governor-elect David Lyon and his running mates Bio-bara-kuma Degi Eremienyo, who were already preparing to be inaugurated into office today.
Indeed, a five-man panel of the Apex Court led by Justice Mary Peter-Odili ordered the Independent National Electoral Commission, the electoral umpire in the country, to withdraw the certificate of return issued to the All Progressives Congress candidates as the winners of the November 16th, 2019 governorship election in the state. Arise News correspondent Chima Nwankwo reports.
Coming only 2 days after the Supreme Court struck out a suit by one of David Lyon's rivals at the primaries and affirmed his election as governor-elect of Bayelsa State, it was a shocking ruling. While Tuesday's ruling was over the conduct of the APC primaries, this time the decision was based on the discrepancies in the candidature of Lyon's running mate, Senator Bio-bara-kuma Degi Eremienyo. Reading the lead judgment, Justice Mary disqualified Lyon's running mate as a candidate in the election for submitting forged documents to INEC. The subsequent disqualification infected the joint ticket with which he and the governorship candidate ran for and won the November elections.
The Supreme Court, in its wisdom, has disqualified the candidates of APC, the governorship and deputy governorship candidates, directed that the certificate of return issued to them should be withdrawn, and a new certificate of return issued to the candidates that have the majority of lawful votes cast and have the geographical spread in the governorship election. And I believe my clients merited that.
The five-man panel, led by Justice Mary Peter-Odili, ordered the Independent National Electoral Commission to withdraw the certificate of return issued to David Lyon.
The implication is that the governor will not be sworn in tomorrow, and justice has been done.
David Lyon's sacking comes 24 hours to his scheduled swearing in as governor of Bayelsa State. Chima Nwankwo, Arise News.
Joining us now from Abuja to make sense of all of this is Joseph Ameh, a legal practitioner and a public affairs analyst. It's a pleasure having you, Joseph, in Abuja. Let's make sense of all of this. The reason why this judgment went this way, it was said that the certificate of the deputy governor, the deputy governor-elect, was the problem. And the reason was because he presented a certificate he couldn't attest to. I mean, explain the technicality of that area.
Hello, good morning. Unfortunately for the APC, this decision has been taken. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Unfortunately for the APC, this decision has been taken. Unfortunately for PDP, there's a judgment, that they are relying on to return back to power in Bayelsa State. In terms of technicality, I want to say that at this point, the Supreme Court is beginning to give me a description of laws that have become masters of inconsistencies. Because to start with, this particular decision has deviated from certain precedents that they have set on ground already. I understand that the Supreme Court is the apex court, like the way Justice Oputa put it in the case of Adegoke Motors. He said the Supreme Court justices are infallible because they are that they are not final because they are infallible, but they are infallible because they are final. And so the idea of Supreme Court maintaining different stance on different cases, is quite a potent challenge for every onlooker out there. For example, I'll give you a perspective from Kogi State, when the issue of Prince Abubakar Audu, late Prince Abubakar Audu came up, you know, they talked about the party, that's the same Supreme Court, said the votes belong to the political party, right? Yes. And now, in this particular case now, instead of deciding, my own view is that the Supreme Court should have decided that because the vote belongs to the political party, that particular political party should have brought up another candidate to represent, to replace this Mr. David Lyon, instead of completely removing them off the scene. And also, in terms of affidavit, I believe that the final affidavit sworn the deputy governor-elect, who was just nullified, that's Mr. Eremienyo, that's Degi Eremienyo, that particular final affidavit should have vitiated every other document he filed before. So in terms of technicality, I think the Supreme Court has gone very deep into technicality in this particular instance. Well, so that's my perspective.
INEC doesn't have the pass to disqualify candidates, as we're told. It doesn't have that pass by law. But do you think that the electoral body has the responsibility to fact-check and verify candidates? What's your opinion on all of this? Because as we have seen, this is a pre-election matter that has gone all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yes, this particular election now, to me, is more or less justice according to the Constitution, because the Constitution prescribed in Section 182 a particular qualification required, and for a joint ticket, both the governor and the deputy governor must be qualified. But in terms of INEC, taking this a position to disqualify a candidate without conducting a background check, I don't blame INEC in this particular case, but I blame the political party. The responsibility of the Supreme Court now was to have either, nullified the entire election and sent it back for a rerun, or in another circumstance, insisted that since the vote belonged to the political party primaries that was conducted should be considered, and the second person who took the second position in the APC primaries should have been considered instead of the PDP candidate. Because as it is now, the popular mandate of the people has just been, technically, given to another person by the Supreme Court. The PDP candidate is not the mandated person by the people. So whatever decision the Supreme Court has taken now, I do not personally agree with it, but because it's the apex court, there's nothing we can do about it for now. The only thing is the APC can go back and ask for a review of that decision. That's my take.
Okay, so let's look at the consequences of this verdict. Atiku Abubakar has come out to congratulate in Bayelsa State Senator Duwe-Odili, already congratulating him as the governor-elect in Bayelsa State. However, Adams Oshomole has come out to say that the party, PDP, lacks constitutional spread. As it stands, INEC is supposed to rework the results to determine who the next Bayelsa State governor is. What are the consequences of this? How is the next person going to be determined?
Now, in terms of constitutional spread, it's required that at least 25% of the votes spread across the political zone, must be gotten by any winner of a particular election. If we are to, go by the law, stricto sensu, in a strict form, the 25% has not been met by PDP. So they don't have any reason to celebrate now. And whoever is congratulating the PDP candidate has not done, a proper analysis of, the implication of this judgment. Because the Supreme Court did not mention specifically that the PDP candidate should be declared. And that has created a kind of lacuna, a void, which means that the decision is still subject to further interpretation and further review to determine, a different approach, a different way of, getting the clear mandate of the people to the people. That's it.
Okay, Joseph Ameh, I just quickly want to come in here, and I just want to, talk to some grand statements that have been made here today about the fact that they say INEC cannot disqualify people, and why did INEC not see this at time? In the case of Natasha Akpoti, INEC did disqualify, because of the fact that her running mate had somebody that was younger than the normal age threshold. And INEC wouldn't even allow her to substitute until she went to court as regards that. Somebody will want to get clarity on that line. I'd like to get clarity. Secondly, a lot of lawyers that I have met have told me that this is how they remit the constitutional spread. That when you're not talking about constitutional spread, since the election has been nullified, all the votes of David Lyon is nullified, then you move to the next candidate, then you don't use the threshold gotten by the initial candidate, that's David Lyon, as a threshold. You calculate, does Diri's vote vis-a-vis other votes and the vote cast meets the 2.51 point, the 2 over third, majority and the likes, the election constitutional spread, then with that calculation, Diri actually makes it. That you now nullify everything that initially was from David Lyon. What do you say to these technicalities?
Okay, in terms of the position of INEC, I believe that INEC's hands were tied because at first the Federal High Court gave a judgment with regards to this case, and the APC candidate's position was nullified because of his deputy. He then proceeded on appeal. At the point of appeal, the judgment now favored the PDP before this matter ended up in the Supreme Court. So at those in the course of those steps, there is nothing that INEC could have done, Now the election has been, won and all that. The people's mandate is what is at stake now. In the case of Natasha, the deputy was disqualified, and as a result of that, the candidate was also disqualified. But Natasha, in the long run, still came back. She bounced back, and she was able to contest the election. Because according to the court, the deputy could not have, the position of the deputy could not have nullified the governor. So that particular case also is a case that needs to be properly studied, because in this particular election, the ticket is a joint ticket. And by the provision of the Constitution, when there's a joint ticket, if one party, has a problem, that's one of the candidates has a problem between the deputy governor and the governor, the outcome of the election cannot go in their favor because the position they are holding becomes a nullity, it becomes a void position, So that's what happened in this particular case. The Supreme Court, to some extent, they are right because both candidates have the joint ticket, and whatever affects the one candidate negatively would definitely affect the other candidate negatively.
All right, Mr. Joseph Ameh, stay with us. We're going on a quick break, and we'll be right back to talk some more about this development. Join us again. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Rise News, and we still have with us from our Abuja studios Joseph Ameh, who is a legal practitioner and a public affairs analyst. Thank you so much, Mr. Ameh, for staying with us. Looking at the development in Bayelsa State, barely 24 hours to that inauguration, I want to stay with the Constitution and what the law really says, because the national chairman of the APC, Adams Oshiomhole, is insisting and alleging that no candidate meets the requirement as ordered by the Supreme Court for that swearing in today, that was supposed to be today. What are the implications, and what does the finding of the Supreme Court of a forged certificate imply? Should there be a runoff election? Should none of the other candidates meet this required spread by the Constitution? What are the implications of this forged certificate for the APC, who is making these allegations?
Thank you very much. In terms of the statement of Mr. Adams Oshomole, that's the APC national chairman, I think he was in a hurry to make that utterance, because you cannot alter the verdict of the Supreme Court by a mere press conference. The only thing that you can do in such circumstance is to return back to the court and decide through the court and seek a review of the position of the law. Whatever the Supreme Court has decided now is the law. And forged certificate will involved in this matter. When a matter of forgery has been alleged, it means that, you know, a criminal offense has been committed. But in this particular case now, we have to put everything in perspective of the decision in the case of Buhari and Atiku regarding the issue of certificate. The affidavit brought by the president finally, you know, vindicated him that, okay, he had these certificates. So I feel that the same approach should have been applied by the Supreme Court, knowing that there's already a precedent that with an affidavit you can, you know, make your position clear regarding your name and all that, you know. Because some people are alleging that there are inconsistencies in the name and all that. The candidate who was the deputy governor must have made certain changes, you know, to his biodata. The implication of that is that after swearing the affidavit, whatever, you know, has been on paper before is now supposed to, you know, align with whatever he has sworn by the affidavit. The affidavit is validating whatever certificate he had before. So I don't see any reason why, you know, that should be the main point in this particular case.
We need to look at the facts here. We do know that David Lyon was elected by the people, as well as his deputy governor, his running mate. So at this point where we have the Supreme Court, you know, being the ones that determine the election victory, what implication does that have? Because the people of Bayelsa State had no idea that there was a problem of identity, especially with Mr. Bio-bara-kuma. What is the implication of the Supreme Court determining this victory?
From all indication is we are in a state of confusion, and it has now become justice according to the Supreme Court, that whatever the Supreme Court decides, that becomes the justice, that becomes the mandate of the people. And the Supreme Court, at several instances, have taken different positions on, you know, similar issues, you know. So the people now, to me, have been denied their mandate. PDP actually is not the owner of the mandate, because they did not score the popular number of votes. So the mandate at stake now is for APC, not for PDP. So the safest thing to have been done is to either order for a rerun, or in another way, you know, order for a replacement of the deputy, or in another way, you know, go back to the primaries and take the second person who came after David Lyon under APC, because the vote actually belongs to the party as a political party and not to the individual as a particular person.
Okay, I want you to consider this. I know Bayelsa is a basket of cases. You talked about even the second person. That would have been a certain Heineken Lokobri that was even challenging David Lyon, and that had a case in favor of David Lyon just 2 days ago, Even on the PDP side, we still know about the case that's going to come up. Timi Alaibe challenging the re-emerging in the primaries. But listen to this. Section 187 of the Constitution, 1999 Constitution, makes it mandatory for a governorship candidate to have a deputy governorship candidate before his own candidature can be valid. If the candidature of the deputy governorship candidate is for any reason invalid, that of the governor is adversely affected. 187 section of the Constitution said this. What say you about this?
Okay. In this particular instance now, the Supreme Court, has to be seen to do justice, according to conscience and goodwill, and also, innovate some kind of doctrine of necessity to ensure that justice is done to the people. The people in this instance now, feel they have given the mandate, no matter how the mandate was gotten, they have actually given the mandate to a particular person, And this is not the first time that the Supreme Court, will have to adopt, innovative approach in ensuring that justice is done. If they had done it, it would have, been more pleasing to the people and accommodating. But because they are the apex court, you cannot question their judgment. You cannot argue with them. So I take it that they have taken the decision and it's final except if it is reviewed.
Indeed, you cannot second-guess the Supreme Court of the land. Mr. John Ameh, I have two quick questions for you. First, this is an embarrassment to the ruling party in Nigeria and its screening committee, to say the least. But to your mind, what exactly do you think happened here? A lack of due diligence or just sheer impunity on the part of the party? And secondly, it is also a clear case of forgery and perjury by the governorship candidate of the APC in Bayelsa State. Should the police not take up the matter from here to serve as a deterrent to other politicians in Nigeria?
I think that everything concerning this case is all about politics. And from my point here, I know that anything relating to perjury or forgery died at the point of this judgment. The police is not going to investigate. As it stands today, Nigerian police, I've never seen them following up issues like this. After this election, one party goes to victory celebration, the other party goes into mourning. So the APC made a mistake by not conducting due diligence and by not putting all their papers together. So it's their own, mistake from that point.
All right.
But I still feel that the Supreme Court would have innovatively, done justice by, giving them the mandate.
All right, what will you say to an average Bayelsan watching now? Because today, Bayelsa was supposed to be a beehive of activity. In fact, we hear that the president was supposed to come open up, the building about content creation and national content and the like in Bayelsa, and also attend the inauguration of David Lyon. So Bayelsa was already a beehive of activity and all of that. Then this happened. Then we've had, skirmishes here and there. We've had bonfires here and there. I mean, what would you tell an average Bayelsan? How does he process this as we speak now? From understanding that the president was supposed to be in the state to understand that the president is not coming any longer and we're not having any inauguration. And after today, who becomes governor before they sort out that case? Who sits in? Does the Speaker of the State of House of Assembly sit in? Because Bayelsa must have a governor. The tenure for Serake Dixon ends today.
Definitely. It's unfortunate, but I urge the Bayelsans to maintain their calm and go about their normal business and ensure that the environment is peaceful. Because if there's crisis, they will have no state to live in. So in regards to other aspects of it, regarding the issue of who takes over, by the provision of the Constitution, there can be no vacuum when you have a Speaker of the House in Bayelsa State. So for now, until these issues are resolved, I don't expect INEC or PDP or APC to hurry about any particular thing by trying to create crisis in the system, but let the Speaker of the House be sworn in pending when the legal aspect of these issues are resolved. Because going any other way differently, it means that their decisions are being taken harshly. So I urge everyone to maintain peace while the Speaker takes over for now until the decisions are properly considered once again. And that's what I really expect.
We're seeing here that the opposition party obviously welcomes the judgment because they know, or they are confident in the fact that their candidates in PDP would be the next governor. But I want to quickly throw it to what's currently happening in Imo State, where they are now calling for a rerun on the verdicts given by the Supreme Court. Now, in a case such as this, where they accept one judgment from the Supreme Court and not accept one from the Supreme Court, how would you say that this is going to affect their case in
politics, when it favors a particular party, they consider it as a judgment for the people, judgment for democracy, and all that. So I did not expect APC to react differently. Because the judgment is against them, it's going to affect their calculation in the future, and whatever decisions has been taken now, as long as it's against them, you don't expect them to be happy about it. But what is law is law. You cannot change the fact that on paper there are conflicting situations regarding the affidavit. As long as the Supreme Court has taken their view on this particular instance, that the affidavit cannot replace, the changes made over the years about this deputy governor who was just nullified.
Okay.
I believe that APC has to stand by it.
Well, I'd say a very big thank you to you for coming here, Mr. Ameh. Really appreciate you for time.